Welcome to the DEVA
Dr.
conversation.
Labelle made a very interesting point to me just now, which I want to share with you. She said that the current crisis can be summed up in a few words. We have privatized gain and socialized losses. Huguette, how did we arrive at the acceptance at this appalling notion that we can grab our profits and run, but if we make a loss, it's society who has to pay for it?
Well, I think that it is this last financial crisis that has really brought this to the fore. Greed and power. And the people who had power were the people who had the money, who could influence, for example, the type of regulation or the lack of regulation that governments should have been putting forward to hopefully prevent some of this. So I would sum it up by power and greed.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about is this survey that was done by the Global Corruption Barometer, where 91,000 citizens were questioned, and over 90% of the people questioned said that corruption has either stayed the same or got worse since the financial crisis. How do you explain this perception?
I think that what basically happened is that people suddenly were made aware of a lot of the corruption that existed, which they were not aware of before. And I think that when you have that, you automatically have an increase. The other thing that we do is our barometer, and I know you've quoted it before, but in some countries, 50% of the people say that they had to pay a bribe in order to access essential services like education, health, connecting to the water system, electricity. And so you've got the two happening at both ends. At one end are the people as they interface with local governments for services or industries, but sometimes these have been privatized. And at the other end is sort of the mega corruption, where people finally are discovering more and more what has been happening. And that is in terms of major cases around the world. But also that financial crisis, I think, brought to the fore what some of the, if at minimum, mismanagement, which the people would see very much as corruption.
In all the developing countries that I know of, the people who make huge decisions regarding billions of dollars or euros worth of investment, infrastructure projects, they themselves get very small salaries. They get $300 a month, $400 a month.
Yeah.
And then somebody comes along and talks about 10 billion or 500 million. And then, well, naturally. Now, Singapore did something quite remarkable.
Yeah.
They bribed their officials not to take a bribe by paying them such high salaries that it wasn't worth them risking their pension and their salary for them to go and take a bribe from somebody. Yeah. Maybe we should revisit this area where officials are dealing with multi-million-dollar contracts, open tender or not, but are paid such piffling amounts of money in salary. So their remuneration as officials and the decisions they make on the size of the money they actually have to handle is so disproportionate. Whereas if you're a banker and if you're handling huge quantities of money, you get a big fat bonus and a large salary. But if you're a public servant handling a big contract, you still don't, it doesn't matter what size the contract is, you still get your tiny salary. And so naturally they want a part of that action.
Well, let me tell you a story. In Vietnam, TNT, they were paying so much to get their goods out of customs. And this was increasing constantly. So finally it went up to the president and he said, enough. So he talked to the other delivery companies, heads, and they said, yeah, we've got the same problem. So they said, well, let's do something about it. They got together, went to the authorities, and said, enough. If you don't fix this, we're getting out of your country. And see who's going to bring the goods in here. But they said, we're going to help you. Because one of the things we want you to do, we're going to pay you more, but we want you to pay your staff better. And we want to see it happen. Number two, we want to stop the exchange of money. We will help you to establish an collection of the cost of what we do. And there's already a lot of data, systems that are there around the world. We can do that very quickly. And three, we will be a team overseeing to make sure, and we want to put in the window of the customs office that there is no exchange of money, and that if anybody asks you for a bribe, that you must report that number because you're complicit to fraud. It changed it overnight.
Really?
And then when you look at, we have a big case right now in Canada of collusion between companies where contracts were costing 30% more because of that whole system of collusion of the monopolies, but collusions between a number of companies. So 30% more because they were paying bribes, they were feeding, the mafia and so on. So basically, when you clean that up, it means that you've got more money to pay your people better. If it doesn't cost you that much more to buy services, to buy goods, X-ray machines. If you're going to pay twice the cost, you can only have one instead of two, and people don't get diagnosed and so on. So I think that cleaning up the operations, department by department, but especially where there is the intersection between business and the government. And businesses that have started to go clean are making more money.
There's actually the important thing on that thing is that the Singapore model, I think that its critical thing is that they actually do have very good anti-corruption measures.
As well.
So just just increasing
That's a very
salaries,
important point.
just increasing salaries won't do it itself. No. I actually have a point. I don't think you don't bribe people to be good. But you do give them, here are these values, and also you ensure that they do have sufficient income so that there isn't a huge temptation from the bribes. But also things, you also have the anti-corruption measures to actually come in with it. And I think that there is some, but the one thing is that the reason why you can't bribe people to be good is because people can have a very, very limitless desires for money. You were talking about bankers, and some of them seem to have limitless desires for money. And there'll also be a risk if you pay them too much, is that they can take such bigger risks that 1 or 2 years bonuses will be enough to set them up for life. And so therefore there is the same kind of... Exactly. But the other thing is I think that there are some countries which believe that public servants should have a modest life. And the thing is, if they are if you want somebody who wants the biggest possible house and so forth, then even giving them a big salary is not going to be sufficient. And